Hello, everybody. Thank you for attending this presentation. We're going to talk about a system that will enhance what you can do in terms of projects, in terms of consulting jobs, or if you are a regulatory agency, in terms of how to manage and supervise a very large amount of information. So this is what we're going to be presenting today. I will share my screen here with you, and I will stop presenting the camera. And we'll present this once we do a quick introduction. We will have a demo, a real-time demo by Mr. Michael Johnson. So I will start now. Stop this. So we'll be presenting AQMIS, which is the Ambient Quality Management Information System, and the power that you can get out of the information you already have and the projects that you can handle using a tool like this. So my name is Jesse Te, and I'll be presenting the slides such that you know what it does. And Mr. Michael Johnson will be doing the presentation of the application itself. So let's see a brief overview, and then we will get right into the benefits of the system. So a lot of people ask, why emissions inventory? It's just like asking, why monitor ambient air quality, as an example. And we need to conduct emissions inventory because we need to have an idea what is being emitted to the atmosphere. We know that every car in a road will not have a sensor that is calibrated and measuring what the emissions of all the 1,200 pollutants are coming out of the pipe. And a lot of other industries, for example, will have emissions that you cannot simply have a sensor to measure. So we need to estimate. So we can control emissions that are measured, and we can also compute those emissions. And the emissions are important for air toxic analysis. They're important also for reporting to greenhouse gas systems that will evaluate how much is being reduced in terms of greenhouse gases for climate change. And then it's important to do air quality modeling. We know that a monitor gives great value, but because the wind changes, the pollutants from the sources are not hitting the monitor all the time. So we must model when we're doing atmospheric studies. To model, we need to have an emissions inventory. There are a lot of regulations. This is just an example in North America, in Asia and Oceania. The regulations will be different, but it's not much different because the pollutants are the same. They will impact humans, and they will impact ecology, and they will also impact other properties, assets. And then we can see that locations that need to do photochemical modeling to forecast ozone or improve air quality also needs emissions inventory. So these are just examples in North America. Every country will have its requirements. We're just showing that we satisfy all the requirements. So a solution like this, you do not have to develop things from scratch. You have a system that is not a research project. It is a system working for many, many years in different parts of the world, and it has been validated even by the US EPA, the United States Environmental Protection Agency. So we will talk about the benefits of a system like that. I'll give you an overall view of the system such that you do not get lost when Mr. Michael Johnson is making presentation. He will give examples, and then we have question and answers that you can type on the chat. So here comes the benefits. Regulatory agencies, they can optimize the budget. We know that environmental regulatory agencies, they get the budget cut all the time. So how to optimize that? A lot of people move as well to other positions. So if you automate, you can meet all the requirements the agency needs to cover. Consultants, if you're a consultant, we have throughout the world initiate the projects, and we are not a environmental consulting company. We are an IT consulting company, if you will, and an information technology provider. We do not compete against environmental consultants. We team up with environmental consultants when we're doing projects. And when we implement this type of system, more than 15 years ago when we started, companies that started with the companies using AQMIS, those consultants are the same one to this day because they become the preferred consultant to run our system. It's the client will always hire that consultant to keep doing the work. And for facility, a lot of cost reduction using the system and much less red tapes. One of the benefits of the system is that it's fully integrated, and you will see the benefit here. We can conduct emissions inventory, and as we have the emissions done, we literally just press a button and the system will do the dispersion modeling. For those that may not be aware, dispersion modeling is the calculation of how the pollutants leave the emission location, the source, and how they spread throughout the atmosphere, causing air concentration of the pollutants. So we can just press a button and the system will automatically do the dispersion modeling, and we will see the number of models we can use. And this is very good because we also integrate, and you do not have to have all the modules in the system. You could just use the emissions inventory if you just need that. You can use just the monitoring of air pollutants if you just need that. But integrated, it gives even more value. Because if you are monitoring, you have an ambient monitor station, an AMS, then by doing this, we can automatically identify problems in the emissions inventory. Because if it's measuring here different than the dispersion model says it should be, then we know the problem is in the emissions inventory. And today, departments that do monitoring don't even talk with the people doing emissions inventory. This gives a lot of value, and we will see what these values are. So this slide is not very wide, so let me stretch it. Can also conduct human health risk assessments from air toxics. We can compute and do permitting. We have a lot of clients using this system to automate all the bureaucracy, all the regulation, all the red tape to obtain and maintain a permit. Regulatory agencies can also manage receiving permits and issuing the license. And then enforcement by regulatory agency or by the part of the auditing team inside the facility, and then reporting. So integrated gives lots of benefits. So let me give an overview of the system. We have extensive dashboarding. This is just an example of the dashboarding. So at any time, any person authorized to use the system, and the system can be used by a large number of people. Each person can be authorized to only see something or only touch some part of the system. So it is using a browser, you can do that, and then multiple people can be using. So I had a case, for example, where a user of AQMIS was the head of a regulatory agency. The governor called the head and asked, I'm having people complaining about issues on this location. So the head of the environmental agency just got the tablet and just click and say, okay, the concentrations are there just by looking at this at any time. You don't have to spend a month looking for the data, collating to generate reports. You can do automatically. And this, you can see there are many monitoring stations, AMSs, and you can see here them. And you can see here all them, the stations, they have different colors. And we add more value. Monitor stations are valuable, but we're not maximizing the use of the monitor stations. So we can create what we have is a pollution rose. Just like wind roses, we have pollution roses, and we will see the benefit in a minute. So these are just sample clients, the US EPA, the United Nations, we have refineries, we have nuclear power plants, we have pulp and paper, and the list goes on and on and on. We have entire countries, entire states, we have cities, we have private clients, government, etc. This is just an example of the clients using AQMIS. The US EPA, Houston to Lake Charles. This is in the United States, from Houston to Lake Charles. It is 160 kilometers of continuous plants, power plants, oil and gas, petrochemicals, pharmaceuticals. It's the highest concentration of this type of industries anywhere in the world. So our system already conducted many years ago, did all the studies for all the facilities in these 160 kilometers and indicate where measures should be taken to reduce the risk on the population. So we may have watched the movie Aaron Brockovich. This was with Julia Roberts, and it's right on the area that we were analyzing. The event happened before we analyzed and we know what was causing, and we can suggest how to fix it. Entire state like New Jersey, Minnesota, cities like Las Vegas, Kuwait, San Diego, the list goes on and on. Qatar. And this example here, we estimate all the impacts in the state of Minnesota. And the incredible thing is this: if we have monitor stations, we know there are problems, but we cannot separate who is causing the problem, what are the sources that are causing the problem, and where it's coming from. And we cannot segregate if it is from stacks, point sources, if it is from area sources, if it is from road vehicles on roads, for example, trucks, buses, cars, etc. And you can see here, the state of Minnesota was focusing on industries, and we show the risk from industries on the population, because we can segregate with the AQMIS. We can segregate, and then we show that the vehicles were causing way more human health risks from air toxics than from the point sources. So they presented this to the US EPA, and the US EPA changed the approach. They are now focusing a lot on on-road mobile. So example of the dashboards, this is a large urban area, and I'm showing it in different countries. So you see that it's in different languages as well. So then you can say this jurisdiction has a bigger impact of carbon monoxide than this other jurisdiction. However, this other one has more particle matter, PM 2.5, for example, than everybody else, and the list goes on and on. So we can have different way of visualizing. This is available 24/7 if you so desire. This is a on-road dashboard. You can have on-road, you can have just one facility or all the facilities. You can visualize this on maps, on charts. And this case is a very interesting one. We had this a regulatory agency regulating all the trucks because they thought the trucks were the problem, when at this location, the automobiles were the problem. Greenhouse gases, reporting, calculations, submissions. Now, when we have to estimate emissions to the atmosphere, there are many things. For example, it can go as simple as filling up the tank on a gas station, frying hamburgers on a McDonald's fast food, to all the processes on a refinery, an entire city, ports, airports, roads. There are over 11,000 different processes that emits to the atmosphere. We have calculation methods for all of them. And these calculation methods were validated by the US EPA. We're the only ones validated by the US EPA. Dispersion models, you just press the button and you can run all the sources. For example, in the state of Minnesota that I presented, we ran simultaneously at the same time 200,000 sources for the entire state of Minnesota. And we have different models. As you can see here, AirMod, CalPAF, SkiCam. And we have photochemical models as well. This model here is the one used extensively in Germany, Poland, Switzerland, Austria. And this one here is a photochemical model that works just like a PAF model, like CalPAF. But it does all the chemistry that we have in CMAQ. So this one is a great model to use. And these are photochemical models. We can run them as well. So now, if you have ambient monitor stations, AMS, you can see that all you get is this. This is valuable, but you can get more than that. In this location here, the regulators were trying to clean up the high impacts. You can see here things exceeding right here, brutally exceeding. And they thought it was coming from the refinery because it's the close thing to the monitor. Just by using monitor station, nothing else, we can generate a pollution rules that indicates where the pollutants are actually coming from. The refineries is here. There was a petrochemical plant farther than the refinery, but the one contributing all the exceedances. So it adds more value. Let me show you how to add even more value to the monitor stations. State of California, we work there as well. And we presented this, and we presented a artificial intelligence system using deep neural networks to forecast air quality on the next 24 hours. And they said, well, we have a problem in Kern. So we ran Kern, and you can see here the blue is measured, and this is what we predicted 24 hours before. So right now we can get measurements and say these are the values that the monitor will measure up to 24 hours ahead. So this is what we are doing here. We're predicting with this accuracy here. They were very impressed. They said, well, maybe you cannot do the one in Tranquility. And we're doing even better there. And I know why the photochemical models were suffering in those locations. The valleys were very narrow. The grids were for the model were wider than the valleys, so it wouldn't work really well there. But our artificial intelligence system is doing a much better job. And you can see here we can do AQIs. The colors are the ones defined by the US EPA, air quality indexes. And we can do now forecasting and all prioritized sources. We can do human health risk assessment, permitting and compliance. A lot of places do that with our systems. Can forecast with models. This one is in Toronto, Canada. This one we can get, this is a large storage tank farm on an island that impacts Doha in Qatar because of the World Cup this year. The people cannot smell those emissions. So we model and we know how it's going to impact, what are the measures they have to do. By the way, we also model everything in Qatar. Can visualize on maps, extensive mapping. State of Texas is so rich, the sources define the boundary of the state. This is Kuwait, as I told you, we model Kuwait. Extensive reports, extensive transmission of the reports, electronic submission, put in your website if you want, etc. So greenhouse gas reporting. And now I will pass to our friend, Mr. Michael Johnson.
Thank you, Jesse. That was a fantastic introduction and overview. So I'd like to start off by covering a few of the more interesting parts of the AQMIS system and show you some of the values that you can get out of the system at a high level. One of the things you'll note is that we have these nice dashboards, as Dr. Tay mentioned. We also have the emissions module to do complete inventories, complete monitoring, air modeling, and health risk assessment capabilities. To support all of that, we also have ticketing and reporting. I'd like to start by talking about kind of the main dashboard that executives and managers of the environmental programs can use to get an understanding of their emissions and their capabilities in the program at a moment's glance. You'll note that this dashboard shows the inventory year, how many facilities you have, the types of releases, and the number of pollutants. A little bit further down, you'll note that we have a summary listing all the facilities in your study area. So you can see their names, you can see the pollutants that you're tracking and they're reporting. You can see the study area or regional totals for these individual pollutants right off the bat. And you can see a map showing their location. So not only do you know what facilities are out there, but you can see them on the map. This is very important to be able to understand where the facilities are and where their impacts may or may not be. A little further down, we also have summary graphs showing what the relative contributions to the overall totals you have from facilities. If I move the mouse over the bars, you can see the actual values. So you're not left looking and trying to understand what number this is on the scale. You can see the exact value. If we move over here, for example, to CO2, we can see that this single facility is the largest contributor in our range. If we want to add a few other facilities, we can see how they add and come to the program, but we can also turn them off so we can focus on the bigger values. If we come down here, we can see CO, and we can also just highlight and get the nice simple totals for the graphs. These are great. They can be exported into your reports so that it's not a big deal to cut and paste or do anything. You can automatically send them to a report without a lot of effort. Again, if we want to look at individual facilities, we have a nice facilities dashboard, and we can see the individual facilities. We can see where it's located on an individual basis. We can see what kinds of inventories we have, not just air, but it could be solid waste, surface water, groundwater. Every kind of inventory and management and measurement can be seen. You can see the status, the types of pollutants, which are the largest for this facility, types of releases, and again, the map. Here we're showing it relative on a what would be called like a road map that you would use to navigate by car or your GPS. But we can just as easily switch to satellite maps. Here you can see now, instead of using a road map, you get a nice satellite view like you would get from Google Earth or Bing Maps, for example. Nothing you have to buy. This is built in. No ESRI licensing is required for this. This is automatically part of the AQMIS system. If you want to look at individual details, you can highlight a release point, for example, and click on it, and it will show you the details here. So you can see exactly the actual release point, where it's located, and what its parameters are for modeling. Let's go back. If we wanted to look at the AQI components, we can go ahead and click on the AQI map portion of the system. Again, it'll show you a map showing where the location of the facility is, where it is in relation to other population centers or residential neighborhoods. It will show you the current AQI in real time, so you can see that this value right now we're experiencing hazardous conditions for the pollutant CL. AQMIS will then give you the best suggestion for what can happen. So you can say who should be worried and who needs to take actions, and what the actions are for sensitive populations that are being exposed to this extremely hazardous condition. If we look a little bit further down, we can see another station in a different part of the city, and we can note that its impacts are not as fine. So on the other side of the city, we can see that those folks are experiencing good air quality, and that the NO2 is the driver, but is normally fine. We can see the individual health effects for what we're measuring, and we can see NO2 and ozone are good. We can see the historical values of the AQI, and we can also see tabular values for these as well. This allows you to do not only simple analysis visually, but you can do complex numerical analysis by taking it to, say, something like Excel. Again, all the features that you need to conduct an AQI or understand the study. The AQI module can also be exposed to the public. So if you are a regulator and you need to also share this information with the public, the same version of the map and the values that you're seeing here in real time can be exposed to them as well. We can also look at the monitoring stations, and we can see how what they're looking for. We can look at monitoring values, and we can see, as Dr. Jesse mentioned, we can see the stations, we can see the wind direction, but we can also switch to pollutants. And we can see how the sectors from which are producing the NO2 and how it's arriving at our monitor, and which sources and which industries in this northwest sector are driving the NO2. We switch over to ozone, we can also see how that is coming. And we can see that those values are slightly different, but are also in this northwest sector. Again, this allows a quick assessment of what industries and what types of sources might be impacting your facility area. We switch on to the air modeling. We can see that we can get a list of all the different things that modelers have done. So we can look at different scenarios. And once we are able to get those values, we no longer have to get modeling files mailed to us. We don't have to get reports. We can come and see the model as it was completed, and we can see the results in real time. So we can look at the benzene, and we can see the plot. We can look at ethyl benzene, and we can see an instant upgrade on the plotting. And we can see the sources that are driving these impacts. Further down, we can see the sources that are driving the total highest concentration, and we can look at the contributions of them. We can see that right now we have the single source 42, which is the biggest emitter and driver of our offsite consequence. This is great if you need to understand what to do or what sources need to be curtailed in order to achieve a certain effect. Now, if I wanted to look at the inventory, I just wanted to show something about the calculators. So we can show all the AP42 calculators, as Jesse said. I can go forward, I can choose a natural gas. I can enter the values for the amount of gas fired, the heating value, I can click next, and on the spot, it can give me a list of all the pollutants, all the tonnages, and their efficiency ratings, so we know whether values are good or bad quality. The E's are not so great, the A's are good, and the B's are good. So if we need to do source testing, we can identify which ones we need to improve upon. Now let's talk about the larger map. We can see that we have a larger map of the system. It has a complete built-in GIS, so we can do layer control, so we can turn things on and off, such as facilities. We can turn off road segments if we need, and we can look at contour plots. So we can see also, as we saw on the modeling dashboard, we can see individual pollutants. We can see the plots of other results in other studies, and we can see it in the large. So we're no longer confined to just that tiny little area. We can do this in a very large, very, very nice manner. We can also look at graded emissions. So we can choose, say, anthracene, and we can see what the impact looks like. You're able to see where we're seeing the sectors, and I can turn off the contours. So now we can see kind of a grid of the emissions across our study area. We can see where we're having impacts. This is a nice way to aggregate the emissions and understand where we have intensities. Now let's go and run some reports. We wanted to look at a list of facilities, for example. We could quickly select the facilities and click finish, and we can get a nice report ready to be exported. We can choose to export them into CSV, PDF is a common way to print them, or we can send them to Excel or Microsoft Word. We're looking for pollutant totals. Again, I've prepared this pre-run scenario where we can look at all of the criteria pollutants. And so across our inventory for the year, we can see our NH3, PM, SO2, VOC, and so forth. Again, if I wanted to export these, I can choose to do so, such as Excel, and I will do that now. Oops. Maybe I won't. Maybe I will choose to export this into Excel. And if I open up this file, we can see that the report side by side is here in Microsoft Excel, and we can see the report, and it has almost the same fidelity as what we saw on the printed page from the PDF. These values are live, and so we can adjust them and update them as we needed. So if we wanted to adjust the values and send them off in a report, we can do so. Okay. Hopefully that gives you a nice taste of what can be done within the system. And
thank you, Mr. Johnson. It's
yes.
an excellent presentation. I will address, I'd like to, I could shift my screen, show my screen.
Fantastic.
I have some questions that were submitted. I got this one is, can we use different levels for the AQI? The answer is yes. The system is adjustable because everywhere in the world we go, people will have different requirements. So the system is very flexible. So the other question I received here, let me read this one. Can we change the emissions factor? Absolutely. And furthermore, AQMIS keeps track of all the history of the data. Let's say in 2010, it was entered an emissions factor for something, calculations were done. In 2015, somebody changed the emissions factor. We keep the old one. We know who changed, and you even have space for every single data point you type to justify why it was made. For example, in 2010, there was one regulation, and it was updated in 2015. So whoever is entering data can say modified due to new regulation 2015, for example. I got another one here. Is AQMIS only in English? No, I showed some that were in different languages. We have them in other languages. Can the software communicate with any AMS brand? AMS, again, ambient monitoring station. We connect to over 20 different ones, and whatever other one you bring, we can adjust, and yes, it can work with other one. Okay, let me read this one because I didn't understand this one. Is the emissions inventory built in, or we must input emissions manually? Well, I need to enter what we call throughputs. So let's say you are a power plant and you have a boiler and you're burning fuel oil. So you need to say, you just select, I have a boiler or a power plant, whatever you have, and I'm burning 1 million tons of fuel oil, for example. Then we can compute it in various forms. We say, do you have the specifications for the fuel? Because some fuels you will know it has 6%, let's hope not, but it's an example, 6% sulfur. So we already can compute better quality rating for the estimation because you provided some of the measurements. If you don't, we still compute, and the quality rating for the emissions we lower because there are certain things that were not provided, but we can still do. And this is how emissions inventories are done. Because you do an emissions inventory, let's say in the United States, places that had very good pre-analysis, we went there and there was so much correction that it's needed because it's a improvement process. We do 1 year, next year we know better, and we focus better on the ones that are causing more problems. So we are always improving it, okay? Any other questions? I got one final one here. How does one get additional information? This is very nice because I'll go here and we have it here. You can go to WebLakes/AQMIS, Ambient Quality Management Information System, and you can get more information. If you want to ask questions, you can email aqmis@weblakes.com. If you want to call, here's the number. And Mr. Brian Matthews is the one that will be the one managing your questions. Do we have any other questions? I don't see any other ones. If you do not have, the session is being recorded and it will be available to you. And we will mail you with more information on where to get access to the session. I would like to thank you all for attending the session, and I hope to meet you in person anytime soon. On behalf of Lakes Environmental and Mr. Michael Johnson, I would like to close the session. Do you have anything else to add, Mr. Johnson?
I do not. I think you have covered it in the entirety. Thank you, Dr. Jensen.
Thank you, everybody. And you are on the new day there, so have a nice day. We're still in the past today here for us till March 9. You guys are already March 10. Good for you. I hope the future looks bright. Thank you again. Bye-bye.